Gents, thanks for joining me again for another Executive Board Zoom call update. Lee, I think we'll go straight into things and, can we just have an update on the overall state of play of the club? How are we doing on the whole?
Well, I mean, I'll leave comments about the footballing as part of it to the end of this interview, Tom. But in terms of the state of the club overall, we're about where we thought we would be. It is really tough, there's no question about it. It was ever going to be thus, if you're going to have the stadium continually closed and no fans in, we're starting to pay our costs. It's pretty ugly, but manageably so. We're working very hard to make sure that we hold the club together, and we will. But it's a pretty ugly world for all football clubs, not just ours. So, but we hold it together. We are financially where I thought we'd be at this point, and we'll continue to make the right decisions to get us through this difficult period and probably through the rest of this season. So we're okay. It isn't easy. It's ugly, but we're where we thought we would be.
And I think we'll go back to one of our previous updates where you mentioned, you were hopeful of a deal being concluded whereby the Premier League would be helping out clubs like ourselves. Is that deal any further along compared to where we were when we first discussed it?
Yeah, my understanding is it is, and I keep hoping for news and my phone to ring. I've spoken with the EFL this morning, and so we'd expect some news soon in the next day or so. And that will ease the situation that football clubs find themselves in. It doesn't solve anything long term, but it eases the situation we're all currently facing. So, yeah, we're expecting some news next 2 or 3 days. In fact, I've said that before actually, that these things have taken longer than they should have taken. But we are, following my call this morning, edging closer to ratifying a deal which will be very helpful.
And Steph, we mentioned about the finances. I think one of the most important things for most teams at our level has been iFollow. We've seen fantastic support through the iFollow service and throughout various different parts of the club. How have the numbers been for us? Have they been consistent so far this season?
Yeah, the numbers have been good. They've been pleasing. That obviously season ticket holders get access as part of their deal, but people are buying match passes on a regular basis. In terms of how we're doing compared to other teams, we're certainly right up there. It generates fantastic revenue that we've not had before, and it goes some way towards replacing not having supporters in stadiums, albeit it still does fall some way short. In terms of consistency of numbers, we have been pretty consistent. We've took a dip in the last couple of matches. I think that's understandable given the couple of defeats that we'd suffered recently. You see that at the turnstiles. Whenever you lose games, you lose some support. But by and large, the numbers have been consistent. It does generate good revenue for the club at a time where it's really, really difficult with the stadium closed to generate revenue of any kind. So the support and the revenue streams that we've had through iFollow have been vital up to this point, and I expect that to continue.
And I think, Lee, we'll just jump back to you again in regards to what the government have been discussing recently, where they've announced that some teams can welcome fans back into stadiums up and down the country. Unfortunately, the Black Country has been placed into one of the highest tiers, meaning that we won't be able to welcome fans back next week. But how disappointing is that from a club perspective that we can't have fans back in?
Well, it's disappointing. There's no doubt about it. I pointed that we're in tier 3, if I'm honest with you, and I was looking forward to inviting at least 2,000 back for the Bolton game. But it's not the case. So we're going to have to recalibrate, see what the government's decision is on December the 16th, and then hopefully allow fans back in thereafter. But it was very disappointing. And I know it was for the fans, but it was for the club as well. Now, strangely, although we're tier 3, looking at the fixture list between now and the end of the year, I can only think of one game that will go ahead in front of fans, which is next week at Tranmere. All the rest will be behind closed doors. So the governments have made a sort of strange concession, allowing 2,000 or 4,000 fans back in. At the same time, it's effectively locking the country down. So we can't take advantage of it anyway.
And Dan, I think if we were able to, I mean, it looks highly unlikely for the remainder of the season, but a point that we've discussed previously on these board meetings and in one-to-one interviews with yourself is that the stadium is practically ready to welcome fans. But what final touches would need to be done to make sure we were 100% ready?
Yeah, I don't think it's highly unlikely, Tom, that we'll not have supporters here between now and the end of the season. We're currently in the Tier 3. Our hope is that will be revised, possibly as soon as the 16th of December. If it's not the 16th of December, it may be further on into the December or into early New Year. But whenever that is, we task ourselves with being in a position where we are ready. Yeah, there are a couple of final touches, some expenditure that needs to be signed off, some heritage fencing, some additional toilets. Nothing that we can't get in time for when we reopen, as long as we are given some fair warning on when that would be, i.e. 24, 48, 72 hours. But we're well positioned to be able to reopen, and it very much is the final touches now before we can welcome support.
Tom, let me just add as well, it's not unlikely. You know, I wouldn't want the fans to think it's highly unlikely that fans will not be allowed back in this season. I think they will. It's not as soon as we want, but I think they will be let back in. You know, initially 2,000, then up to 4,000 or 3,270 in our case. And I wouldn't want the message to get out there that I think it's highly unlikely. I don't agree with that. I think they will be allowed back in.
Yeah, and I think the chairman makes a valid point around that 3,270, just to manage supporters' expectations. It's 2,000, up to 2,000 and up to 4,000. Obviously 2,000 in Tier 2 we can easily accommodate. And then our socially distanced capacity would be 3,270. So just so supporters are clear on that, it's not that we can go to 4,000 just because the government say up to 4,000. Sadly, the way that our stadium is made means that it's 3,270 is the limit socially distanced.
I think, you know, for looking at that, you mentioned they're welcoming up to 2,000 back should we move into Tier 2. Logistically, Steph, you know, we've got just under 2,000 season ticket holders, if I'm correct there. You know, with other measures in place to allow directors to come in, members of the press, how would, you know, you move forward in making sure we are accommodating as many season ticket holders as possible?
Well, we've done the sums, Tom. It's up to 2,000, and where we are with the current number of season ticket holders and the other people that need to attend the games, we should be able to get everybody in. You know, so if you're a current season ticket holder, once we're given the green light, if we move into Tier 2, then you'll be contacted by the ticket office. Season ticket books will be made up and they'll be distributed. And as it stands, I've got no reason to believe that anyone who is a current season ticket holder will not be able to come as soon as the restrictions are lifted, which is really, really pleasing, because that's just reward for people who've put their money into the club and left it in the club at a really tough time. You know, they will get the reward of being able to come to the match as soon as we get the green light, which is fantastic for everybody concerned.
And Dan, we mentioned there about, you know, when we do get the green light, we were hoping to get it back in October, you know, when there was a potential return date mentioned there. And is it frustrating from a club point of view, and for those that have worked so hard to make sure that the stadium is ready for when supporters can come back in, that, you know, we haven't been able to welcome them back, you know, for a second time now?
Yeah, it's absolutely frustrating. I think the whole of 2020 is frustrating, whether you run a football club, you run a restaurant, whatever you may earn your money. This has been a difficult year. So, yeah, it is frustrating. We were hopeful of October. That wasn't to be. And now we find ourselves in Tier 3, and that's frustrating. However, we've always said that we as an exec board would task ourselves with being ready when the government allow. And we are at the head of the queue for when stadiums can return. We've had some really positive feedback from the Sports Ground Safety Authority, who have been out and visited both the stadium and training ground in recent weeks. They're really pleased with the work that we've done here. And yeah, we positioned ourselves exactly where we want to be, which is ready, willing for when we are able.
And Steph, financially, if and when the Black Country does move into Tier 2 and fans are allowed back into the stadium, does that have much of an impact on the club based on, the season ticket holders who have left the money in the club? What changes for us when fans are allowed back in?
Yeah, it's a funny one financially. Perversely, at 2,000 supporters, it costs us money to have people in the stadium. Obviously, season ticket holders have already paid, so there's no additional revenue generated there. But we do incur an extra layer of costs in terms of stewarding and all the costs surrounding a match day operation. So, in Tier 2 at 2,000 supporters, it would actually cost more money than it currently does to run behind closed doors. That said, the supporters are the lifeblood of the football club. It's a soulless place watching the matches without the supporters, and that cost will be, is entirely justified. Because we want supporters inside the stadium. That's what we've strived for since last March. It's just not the same without the supporters at the club. The club feel that, the players feel that, and in terms of generating an atmosphere to spur the players on, it's absolutely vitally important. If we were ever to move to tier and have the capacity of 3,270, then we can generate additional income on top, because you've got your season ticket holders plus those paying match day tickets and all the catering as well. That said, under a tier 2 situation with just the 2,000 supporters in, there are ways of mitigating those costs. We'll be running with food concessions. We'll be running with outside areas to have a drink, and we'll be looking at all those other ways to try and generate additional cash to get it into the business. But fundamentally, whatever it costs the club, the most important thing is to get those supporters back through the turnstiles.
I think on that point where you mentioned about, generating some cost, would the club be looking to continue with the iFollow passes? Because obviously there will be supporters who are buying passes normally who now won't be able to come into the stadium. When we get the 2,000 back, would we be looking to continue the iFollow service?
Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately not a decision of ours. That'll be a decision that's made centrally by the EFL. All of the indications are that the iFollow product will remain in place for the remainder of this season. Whether we're 2,000, 3,270, or whatever the figure ends up being, there are some supporters that are not going to be able to take advantage of that. And don't forget, a 4,000 capacity for a stadium with 11,000 is the same for a stadium of 40,000 as some are in the up and down the country. They've only got 4,000. So that iFollow product is still going to be very, very important to a lot of supporters, not only Walsall Football Club supporters, but supporters for every club, to be able to watch their team play. And all the indications are from the centre that will continue. We're waiting for final confirmation of that, but I think that's the message that we'd probably send out at this stage.
And Dan, just going back to, managing expectations about when fans can come back into the stadium, it's not as easy as just, clicking your fingers and everything's there ready to go. There are those final things that need to be put in place, like you mentioned earlier, aren't there?
Yeah, there are, but we want to, when we're given the green light, we are and will be ready. Obviously, if the green light is 11 p.m. on a Friday and we've got a Saturday game, that may cause us some problems. So the supporters will be reasonable with that anyway, in that, it may be a 24-hour turnaround, 48-hour turnaround, no more than that. So we can absolutely cope with that. It's just the way that some of the communication is coming from central government is very immediate. So we've just got to bear that in mind, really.
And Lee, I think, looking, at the potential of fans coming back in, you'll be, looking now to recap those 14 league games that we've had so far. We sit just 5 points off the playoffs. How do you assess the start that we've had to the season?
Frustrating, I think, would be the word I'd use. Tom, I think also the use that Darryl would use too. I think we should be 6 to 9 points better off. And so I'm a frustrated chairman as I sit here now. I think we have a lot more potential than we have realised on the pitch. I think we've been a bit unlucky in some games. I think we've underperformed in others, overperformed in some games and haven't got the rewards. But it's been a frustrating start to the season, if I'm honest, and we're not where I'd want us to be. But we are within touching distance of where I want us to be. And a good run And I'm still, very optimistic about this season. Frustrated as I am with the start. I've been at the training ground this morning, and we discussed it with the team there. And my frustration is felt by just about everybody up there. They know they should have more points than they've got, and I know that some fans are a bit disgruntled about that. But I'm still very optimistic for the season, and we are in touch and distance of where I want us to be.
We've still got 30 plus games to play this season. There's still plenty of points up for grabs. It's all about those fine margins in your games, and like you say, we are nearly there, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, the Newport game, we played extremely well, and we showed that we can match it with anybody in this league. It's a strange league, though. You go on, I never want to sit through the Southend game as long as I live. That's not going to be something I want to see again. But equally, there are times when we played really well. It's just some degree of consistency. But as I say, I'm frustrated, but still satisfied within touch and distance of where we need to be. And, come the end of the season, I still think we'll be in a pretty strong position.
And just on a final note from yourself, Lee, like we always say at the end of these, have you got a message for supporters?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I never miss the opportunity. Thanks for sticking with us. We need you to stick with us a bit longer. Disappointed for us that you can't come to the stadium because we're in Tier 3. I'm more disappointed for you, frankly. A lot of fans stop me in the street and say, come on, Channel, we want to come back to the stadium. And I know you do. And as soon as we possibly can, we will. So I'm disappointed for them as much as I am for myself. But it'll all come good in the end. And I'm pretty optimistic about the future. And just stick with us is my message. Just stick with us, and we'll get through it.
Perfect. And just like to say thank you, Dan, Steph, and Lee for joining me for this one. And I'm sure we'll have another one very soon.